Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox and thanks for logging on. We are starting our weekend off right and everything is for sale. For pricing on any of these watches, reach out to me. My email is tmosso@thewatchbox.com. We are always looking to build inventory. We buy, we trade, and we sell. You can trade for a new flame, trade in a watch you're not wearing, and we will purchase your entire collection outright. We pay cash, we pay fast, we make the process simple. With no upper limit on value paid, we will buy your entire collection of Paul Newman Daytonas. So reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com to buy, trade, or sell. Speaking of Daytonas, here is our big piece on today's show. This was originally launched in 2012, and it is how Rolex does a handmade watch. That's because these gem set Rolex watches are the only truly handmade watches still in the collection today. Everything else has been automated at Rolex, but the process of setting gems, especially in gold, still done the way it would have been done in the 19th century. Now, of course, this watch launched alongside a yellow gold counterpart. The example you see here is white gold, known as the Rainbow Daytona, and there is a lot to love. We have an array of color gradient sapphires set around the bezel. There's 36 of those. And then we have diamond paved lugs and crown guards, still 100 meters water resistant, still automatic winding, still a 3-day power reserve, chronometer certified, anti-magnetic, and 40 millimeters in diameter, and thus very easy to wear in spite of its imposing appearance. It is not a huge watch. It's also quite flat at just over 12.2 millimeters thick. It'll slide easily underneath the cuff. It's broad, and from end link to end link, it does have quite a span across the wrist, but if your wrist is 15 centimeters circumference or up, you're going to find this wears really nicely. Now on the dial, which you see might appear to be meteorite at first glance, the subregisters are actually a crystalline stain that is sort of an etching of gold, the same way Rolex performs etching of meteorite iron. So what you're looking at is a crystalline pattern formed with white gold rather than meteorite subregisters. They are gold. Black gloss lacquer dial with white gold indices and numerals and diamonds set atop the indices. All of this still 100 meters water resistant, and as you could see, still loomed, albeit minimally so. Column wheel, vertical clutch, Rolex 4130 movement inside. The action is outstanding, and though you generally have to wind it for it to operate. The timepiece is wonderfully kept, and a lot of these rainbows give the impression of having never been worn. They tend to be great survivors because people buy them as investments and oftentimes fail to wear them. Well, no fun for the first owner, but for you, you gain all the benefit of a superbly preserved true collectible. You can see the chronograph in operation. Column wheel feel on the caliber 4130 is among the best in the industry. You can hear it and I can feel it. It's a very satisfying action. Plus with the vertical clutch, if you like, you can leave the chronograph running full-time. A really lovely watch. And of the Rainbow Daytonas, the white gold is by far my favorite. Let's say you want to up the ante in wrist presence, but you want to do it without gems. Well, this is another classic, and looks may be deceiving in this case because the watch is a lot newer than it appears to be. This is a modern-day homage by Audemars Piguet to its original 1993 Royal Oak Offshore 25721 reference. That was the original 42, designed by Emmanuel Guet. It was the evolution of Gerald Genta's Royal Oak. Of course, Genta hated the offshore, proving that the revolutionary always becomes the establishment. And in 2018, for the 25th anniversary of the model, this was launched. In almost every regard, identical to the first Royal Oak Offshore, only a Audemars Piguet expert or diehard would be able to tell them apart, even at close range. The main difference is that the newer watch features an in-house caliber with more technical sophistication, toughness, power reserve, and of course not having 25 years of wear and tear on the case, bezel, and bracelet. All of the metal remains razor sharp. Another great advantage here is that the pantograph cut petite tapisserie dial is still present. Later on in the offshore's life, Audemars Piguet would downgrade the dial to a stamped mega tapisserie, which is attractive but not artisanally crafted. This is cut on a pantograph lathe, very old-fashioned. It's the way the Royal Oaks are still cut, and you have that here on a jumbo. You may have to wind it up. The watch has a 50 to 55 hour power reserve, quite a bit better than the 38 to 40 of the original from the 90s. And while it still uses a Dubois de Praz vertical clutch chronograph mechanism, the AP base, the 3126, has that 50 to 55 hour power reserve, a full balance bridge, and a free sprung balance for greater shock tolerance. Still 100 meters water resistant. You can see the return of the nitrile shoulders for the chronograph pushers and the crown. We'll throw this on the wrist. This is based on the 42, but everyone who knows Royal Oak offshores and Royal Oaks, especially when on bracelets, they wear larger than their rated size. So you really want to think of this as more of a 44 in terms of how it fits and how it sits. Though the angling of the lugs at the edge does help mitigate against smaller wrist issues. Now, I could wear this just fine. My wrist is 16 centimeters circumference, but you can see those lugs are right out to the edge of my wrist. I really do think you need a wrist of my size or larger to wear this. It fits, but if you got a smaller wrist, you're going to want a smaller Royal Oak, or maybe you just go with that Daytona. Now, this not being a 1990s Royal Oak offshore, it has a Luminova dial, so you'll have no trouble reading your tribute watch in the dark, and the design is enduring. Unlike a lot of retro reeditions, most of the Royal Oak offshore design cues of today can be dated back to the original, now 30 years ago. So, like the BMW 3 Series, the Porsche 911, the Royal Oak has evolved gently, which is why when we throw back to 1993, we see detail changes on the dial and the case flank. It's not a wholesale retro watch. It's still a very modern watch with a nod to the past, and so it has a soul and a credibility and a legacy all of its own. Now, back in 2017, Parmigiani Fleurier gave us a precious metal version of the Tonda hemispheres, and we've actually got the steel version right here, which launched in 2021. So 42.8 millimeters in stainless steel. It is a beautifully handcrafted case with exquisitely sharp breaks between the lugs and the case. That's a product of hand manufacture and finishing. Now, you can see it has the toric bezel. This is, of course, part of the toric family, the toric, I should say, hemispheres. I think I called it the Tonda a moment ago. It is the toric hemispheres. And again, it's this Greek column-inspired bezel, which is a double flange with coining, but the idea is it's like a Greek column that's been compressed vertically. Now, you can see the watch, a little bit different from the Tonda hemispheres, has a retrograde system, and that retrograde includes a wonderful quick setting mechanism. Let's quickly advance so we're out of the date change danger zone, just to be safe there, because this does have a traditional quick set. It's not like most dual time watches where you have to spin the hour hand to advance the date. Here we do have a traditional quick set, and at the end, the retrograde action is just a ton of fun to play with. Now, we also have two independent time zones, which means you can set that secondary time zone to the minute. Most dual time watches give you independently mobile hour hands, but then you only get one display of minutes. So you can't deal with time zones that are 15, 30, or 45 minutes off, whereas with this system, you absolutely can. And you get an AM/PM indicator for both the local time, the AM/PM is down at 6 o'clock, and the reference time, where the AM/PM is at about 1:20 on the dial. Now, the watch does feature lovely hands, which Parmigiani describes as javelin, and there is luminescence, albeit not a lot of it. This is a true dual-time watch, the ultimate traveler's companion, and on the reverse side, you can see the Parmigiani caliper PF317, twin barrels, automatic winding, free-sprung, 5-position adjusted, 50-hour power reserve, stop seconds, and a quick set. You can see we have a free-sprung balance architecture, and you can see the Vaucher star on the base plate. You can also see that the bevels here are of a very high grade, mirrored and rounded, finished off by manual technique, so that they're not the sharp machined bevel that you get on, for example, an Audemars Piguet. This is really nice stuff. And then we have 3 different finishes on the rotor. And of course, Parmigiani, through its family of component makers, makes just about every part of the watch. One notable exception being the buttery soft Hermes straps, as Hermes is a stakeholder in the Parmigiani family of companies, and so the OEM strap supplier to Parmigiani itself. You have an echo of the shape of the lugs in the buckle. This is the Toric Hemispheres Retrograde, a really cool, true travel time watch. Now, if you want a more traditional take on a travel time watch in a much smaller size, This is the way to go. Patek Philippe 5134P, a travel time Calatrava, based on the system that Louis Cotier created for the late 1950s Patek Philippe travel time reference 2597. This watch is similar to the second series 2597 in that rather than just having a mobile hour hand, you actually have a mobile hour hand and then an independent second hour. And because they're both 12-hour sweeps, you can superimpose them and they will stay that way. The second time zone's 24-hour indicator is up at the top of the dial. So you can see how that lets you know whether, for example, that secondary hand is pointing to 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. And you can see that we are pointing right at 21 there. So that little stub skeleton hand, that is actually at 9 p.m. And again, just cover it up if you don't want it. This is the platinum model, 37 millimeters in diameter, 9.9 millimeters thick, 46 millimeters from lug to lug, very compact across the wrist. You have the top Vesselton diamond between the lugs at 6, the signature of a modern platinum Patek Philippe watch. With the pusher adjusters at 9 o'clock and a crown guard profile at 3, it has the appearance of a larger watch, even though it is a true 37. Several different finishes on the dial. We have a stepped sort of railroad track minutes outboard, then a concentrically brushed silver metallic hour track with applique polished white gold hour indices, and then at center we have a frosted opaline mat, and then we have concentric patterns in each of the sunken sub-registers. Turn it over. We have Patek manufactured caliber 215, manual wind, 44-hour power reserve. We have a 4 hertz beat rate, H in jewels, a free-sprung gyromax style balance, handsome hand finishing, which you can see glinting and gleaming in my camera. And then we have the Geneva hallmark Poisson de Genève old school, no longer featured on Patek watches, but these 5134s were made from 2001 to 2008. The platinum model came out in 2002, so these are discontinued and long discontinued. We've got a full clasp for security against dropping your watch. When you throw this on the wrist, you can see it is really quite compact. 5134s are rare, but the platinum models are the rarest. And you can see that it really does wear nicely on a small wrist, suitable for him, for her. It's a unisex option today. One of the few 2000s era complications that didn't succumb to elephantitis. That was the era of the big watch and the huge watch, and what a relief this was neither. One thing I love about Blancpain is this is a brand that offers quality comparable to the Holy Trinity, but it also offers great value because unless you're talking about a 50 fathoms diver, people just don't have a lot of attention span for Blancpain. What we have here is a Le Mans perpetual calendar chronograph, and by the way, it is a flyback chronograph, so you can reset and restart without first stopping. So you have a moon phase, a perpetual calendar, a flyback chronograph, automatic winding, screw-down crowns and pushers, 80-meter water resistance, and I'm pleased to say, while it is a dress complication, it is still quite well loomed, so you can read it easily in the dark. At 40 millimeters in diameter, it packs a ton of value into its case, as this is a superb assembly of features in a very wearable package. The lugs are less than 45 millimeters across, lug to lug, so the watch, though not small, doesn't stretch broadly across the wrist. Let's take a quick look on my 16 centimeter wrist, and you can see I wear it beautifully. Plus the strap is still brand new and a little bit stiff, so it's gathering my wrist in more than it normally would. You can see that lovely Le Mans family double gadroon, double stepped, double flanged bezel, and then the dial all black with rose gold hands and indices. Again, a perpetual calendar, a flyback chronograph, and a column wheel vertical clutch flyback chronograph. Flip it over, and you can see a beautifully finished Frédéric Piguet caliber F585. Frédéric Piguet developing the movements for Blancpain. When Blancpain was reestablished in the early 80s by Jean-Claude Biver, refounding the brand, which had not survived the quartz crisis, he decided to do it exclusively around mechanical watches, and he brought in manufacturer Frédéric Piguet as his joint partner in the endeavor. Eventually, in 1992, they were both purchased by Swatch Group and merged to create Manufacture Blancpain. So this truly deserves to be described as a manufacture movement. You can see it is beautifully finished. You can see the column wheel in action with a blued screw at its center. It does have a vertical clutch for seamless engagement. You can see the bevels here, including on the rotor, hand-finished, mirrored, and a mile wide. We have engine turning as well as Côte de Genève on bridges. We have fire-blued screws. We have engine turning on the base plate, satination on the wheels. And you can see that all the way around, the detailing is superb. Automatic winding, 40-hour power reserve, a full rose gold deployant clasp, and just a wonderful way to buy something that would probably cost $200,000 if the dial said Patek Philippe. We do love our 50 fathoms though, but I also love the unconventional, and that's exactly what we have here. Launched in 2017, this is the smallest of the modern 50 fathoms bathyscaphe family. It is the 5100 case, that's what this reference is known as. It is only 38 millimeters in diameter. You could see incredibly short, under 46 millimeters lug tip to lug tip, and then just over 10 millimeters thick. Throwing it on my wrist, you can see that it wears beautifully. It wears like a vintage watch. This is very much like a true 50s or 60s diver. It is not too small, not by a long shot. Still 300 meters water resistant, well loomed with a 120 click ceramic capped bezel. It gives you all the capability the standard reference 5000 bathyscaphe gives you. It even has a Frederic Piguet movement inside that's free sprung, anti-magnetic, automatic, and has a 4-day power reserve. Let's hear the bezel because it is one of the highlights of the watch. It really does feel as good as it sounds. As refined as Rolex, but louder than Rolex. There is no shortage of luminescence here. This watch is made of stainless steel, and you can see we have a luminescent bezel pro. We also have a loomed seconds hand, which is great. Every dive watch should have both of those features. For some reason, they don't always. And we talked about fine finish from the Frederic Piguet manufacturer, and you can see on the reverse side we have that as well. Now this is the 1150 caliber, 2 barrels. You can see free sprung with a recessed bolt aerodynamic balance and a silicone hairspring for anti-magnetism, adjusted in 6 positions, which is 1 more than a standard chronometer and 1 more than the high horology standard. We have a rotor that's been blackened. We have media blasting, satination on the edge mirror beveling. The bevels on the bridge is truly gorgeous, and the Côte de Genève stripe super wide with a lovely color gradient from one side to the other. All screw heads here, rather than being blued, have been black polished, and their slots and circumference chamfered. And you can see still 300 meters water resistant. Sailcloth straps, super rugged textile, soft, supple rubber insert on the bottom. We have a Blancpain steel pin buckle for quick adjustments on the fly. And again, wonderful feel. Ceramic cap atop the bezel, a watch that is unforgettable and irresistible. This is easily my favorite of the modern day bathyscaphes. I'm going to let you know that this is the penultimate watch, and you might be a little bit impressed that the penultimate watch here is the first ever fundamental innovation and first ever model from the August Mark Grubel Forsey. Stephen Forsey and Robert Grubel, having come over from Audemars Piguet Renault et Papy, founded their company Completime to develop movements for others, and then their eponymous brand Grubel Forsey in La Chaux-de-Fonds to build absolutely uncompromised watches that shoot for the moon. Now this is the double tourbillon 30 degree, 43.5 millimeters in rose gold. You can see there's a sine wave that orbits all the way around the case band to remind you of the oscillator inside. I apologize for the fingerprints. I handle watches without gloves so that they don't get dropped. That's the #1 reason. And you can see that the material is in outstanding condition, and the lugs have a wonderful concave mirrored profile that's easy to miss in online photos. Now the dial, as you can see, features a number of registers, 72-hour power reserve. Here's your 60 seconds display. We have 2 tourbillon in 1. One, which is angled at 30 degrees, makes 1-minute circuits, and then the outer one, which is flat plane, makes 4-minute circuits. And with this little serpentine quad spoke, you can see it actually traces a 60-second track with oncoming hands replacing the outgoing hands. We have fire blued bolts as well as hands. Take a look at the finishing of that balance bridge. Not only is it black polished, but it is black polished in the round all the way around. And so is the secondary bridge for the primary tourbillon, which is adjusted in 5 positions, free sprung, and equipped with an overcoil on the inner and outer portions of the curve. The idea here is chronometry, and in fact the double tourbillon 30 degree won a modern era chronometry trial with what was at the time the highest score ever achieved. Flip it all over, it's just as impressive. On the reverse side, you can see the bridges have been frosted using a steel bristled wire brush. And then we have bevels that are literally a mile wide. We have more black polishing and rounding of the underside of the tourbillon assembly, and you can really see that tourbillon assembly well from this angle. We have 5-spoke wheels that have been internally beveled, which means each wheel internally contains 40 interior angles. And then we have a sort of circular satination across the base plate with solarization on the barrels. And again, manual wind, 72-hour power reserve. You can see that the bridges themselves are incredibly thick, which allows for broad finished sides in satin and bevel, and then golden chiton fixing the pivots as they would have been in the pocket watch era, with yellow gold gilding and both mirror polished and giant fire blued screws. We also have a double folding Grubel 4-seat clasp. We'll throw this watch on my wrist. While it is large and definitely in charge, it's actually a watch that I could wear confidently and happily. The watch is rich in rose gold. It matches any skin tone beautifully, and it has a warmth that's missing in white metals. You can also see how the lugs really are curved and how they arc around the edge of the wrist rather than overlapping awkwardly. And while the watch isn't thin, well, it does have a sloped case flank, and it will fit underneath most dress jacket cuffs. A truly special landmark piece that actually reclaims the original Breguet chronometric intent of the tourbillon, not just a watch built and finished to a cost-no-object standard, but one that actually functions as a better timekeeper as a result. After that, what could possibly finish up this run we have? How about something with only 2 hands? That's right, this is the super rare and exotic 2021 model year 10-piece titanium limited edition Debetune DB25 Quatre Jaune. It was a U.S. market limited edition with a dial that looks like gold, but is in fact fired mirror-polished grade 5 titanium. Everything that's blue on the dial is also fired mirror-polished titanium, and fired for a different duration at different heat levels with different amounts of oxygen present in order to create the different color. So this is the same material fired to 2 different colors. Now you can see that not only do we have the fired and polished center that you get on a standard DB25, but the toroidal outer hour track, which you can see is cambered and stepped up, that has also been crafted here of fired yellow titanium. Plus we have the celestial motif commonly included on DB25 models, where the near celestial bodies are actually little dowels of gold inserted into drillings in the dial, and then the distant bodies in the Milky Way band, those are actually applique gold leaf. Now here we have a case that's only 10 millimeters thick, that is just about 49 millimeters lug to lug, and the watch itself is only 42 millimeters in titanium, with sapphire on the front, sapphire on the back, a titanium dial. It is the quintessence of dust, feather light, and a pleasure to wear, plus hypoallergenic for those of you who have a nickel allergy. You can see how easily it fits on the wrist and how easily it would slide underneath the cuff. Short enough across the wrist that you could wear this on a 14 centimeter circumference forearm. Even ladies are encouraged to give this one a try. On the reverse side, you can see this is on the front first, a more accessible Debetune. Buttress-like standard fixed lugs, a round cased, a solid dial. But you get all of that signature Debetune innovation and technology on the reverse side, where you can see the company's patented 2016 blued titanium and white gold balance wheel, one of no fewer than 10 balance wheels patented by Denis Flageolet, the genius watchmaker co-founder and direction setter at Debetune and L'Auberson. You could see 2 barrels, manually wound, self-adjusting, that's also patented, with a 6-day power reserve. They cannot accidentally be overwound. We have broad stripes, Côte Debetune here, as they are called, and then we have, as with the Grubel 4C, a continuously rounded and black polished balance bridge. But unlike the Grubel 4C, we have 1, 2, 3 shock protection springs. They call that triple parachute, improving the durability against damage under shock, but also more rapidly recentering the balance staff in its pivot jewel to improve chronometry. Basically, it gets back to keeping good time more rapidly after a shock. Now you can see the triple parachute spring system, both blued and black polished. And then we have a hairspring that's actually 2 elements shaped by hand and clamped together to breathe concentrically like an overcoil, but to be shock resistant and flat, like a flat hairspring. Satination you can see on the wheels and solarization on the barrels, We have anglage that is very traditional, mirrored, and a mile wide on the edge of the bridges, and you can see that well here. Plus, we have media blasting on the base plate, black polished screws, and a double finished rose gold name and reference number plate at the base. A very, very special watch, protected by no fewer than half a dozen patents. If you love this watch, again, it's only one of 10 ever made, reach out to me at tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing.